So again, hi everyone. My name is Annabelle Muntz and I'm your host and moderator. I want to welcome to all of our new guests and welcome back to my returning audience members. So moving on to our content for today so we can start digging in. Our focus is on, of course, the impact of the Delta variant on international operations, with a look at new and revised restrictions and some welcome news of UK's opening, plus some insights into hotels as well as other service areas, especially in the realm of COVID testing, which has unfortunately become once again a primary. So let's go ahead and get to it. Let's talk about who's with us today to share their expertise. As always, we start off with Christine Bambacas, our Senior Account Manager and Ops Expert, who's going to share her global regional review, including, as always, the latest on restrictions, openings, access. What's up with this vaccine-only access into venues that we're seeing in different destinations and how that trend is going. Adam Hartley is back after a short but brilliant hiatus, becoming a viral TikTok star. He's our manager and fearless leader for global regulatory services. He has a breakdown on the breaking news from Canada, the US, and Mexico. Next, we're welcoming back Jason Hayward from our Universal Aviation United Kingdom London Stansted office. Now that the UK is officially open as of early August, I've asked Jason to provide a reality check on what's happening as trip volume continues to build. Now I have two new guests today, so two new faces to share with you. First is Kara Peterson with Marriott International. She's going to share insights and perspectives on how Marriott is supporting their business clients in the return to international travel safely and securely. Hotels have been a constant topic of interest for our webinar attendees based on the many inquiries I've been receiving. So we're excited to have Kara join us for a firsthand perspective. And finally, our last guest is Siad Skaff with Cedars Health. Cedars is an expert in mobile laboratory services, and it's also Universal's partner for mobile COVID-19 PCR testing. It's a newer service we're offering to our managed trip clients. You'll hear more about that service in the weeks to come. But for today, we're taking an operational focus. Since PCR testing is resurging as a requirement, even for the vaccinated, I asked Ziad to stop in and offer a clinician's expert perspective on the challenges and operational impacts he's seeing happening in the field around COVID testing, especially for private operators like you, and especially since testing seems like it's going to hang around with us for quite a bit longer. So we're going to close out your day with questions, as always. And with that, let's get started with the worldwide operational review from Christine. Hi, Christine.
Hello.
Let's get started with the Caribbean.
So for the Caribbean, we have quite a few updates to note here. So the first one is going to be Anguilla. People that are vaccinated looking to travel to the island, in addition to filling out their online application, they will also now have to provide a PCR test obtained 3 to 5 days prior to arrival. It's important to note that for this country, when you do arrive, everybody will have to complete, as far as the passengers, COVID testing on arrival, and they'll need to take government-approved transportation to their hotel where they need to await for those results. And they're usually known within 12 hours of testing. Then we have Antigua. Vaccinated persons that are looking to travel to the island, just as Anguilla, will need to provide a PCR test prior to arrival, in addition to filling out the online application and provide that proof of vaccination. So when they do arrive, they will need to stay at a government-approved hotel. But it's important for this country to note that the PCR testing is also applicable to crew. Then we have Aruba. For Aruba, in addition to all the other requirements for entry, they added the US to the high-risk country. And as such, regardless of the vaccination status, you do have to provide a PCR test 72 hours prior to arrival. Then we have the Bahamas. Vaccinated persons that do travel to the country as of August 6th will need to show a PCR test obtained within 5 days of arrival. Now, it's important to note for this country that the PCR test is also needed for intra-island travel. Then we have Curacao. People that are vaccinated traveling to the country from the US will need to show proof of vaccination, fill out the online form, and of course now provide a PCR test 72 hours prior to arrival. So for this country, if you are vaccinated, you are exempt from the post-arrival COVID testing. But for this country, in addition to all the other requirements, you will need to have travel health insurance. Then we have the Dominica. As of August 6th, vaccinated persons that do travel to the island no longer need to quarantine. They will have to fill out an online application, fill out or upload their vaccine certificate, provide a PCR test obtained 72 hours prior to arrival, and they will also have to pay for an antigen test that they need to complete upon arrival into the country. And then for the Caribbean, the last country to mention here is Jamaica. Persons coming from the US, which is considered a high-risk country, in addition to all the other requirements, will also need to provide a PCR or an antigen test 72 hours prior to entry.
Got it. There was quite a bit from the Caribbean this time around. So I understand there are no changes, by contrast, to report this week for Central America and South America. So we're going to move right into Europe. That is, of course, except for the UK, because Jason's going to cover that for us.
Yes. So for Europe, Cyprus, as of August 2nd, they did advise that persons looking to travel to the country will need to complete a PCR test every 7 days while they're on the island. The exception to this requirement is people that are vaccinated or have proof of recovery within the last 6 months. Then we have France. 2 updates to mention here. The first is that as of early this month, persons coming into the country, of course, they need to show either a PCR test or vaccination or proof of recovery. This is now extended to intra-country travel. So domestic flights within the country, they'll need to show proof of vaccination, a PCR test, or proof of recovery. For this country, as of August 30th, this requirement will be extended to the crew. So they are exempt from the COVID testing for the international entry, but it's not required for those domestic legs. The other item to mention for France is, as with other countries in Europe, they do have that green pass, which you need to show in order to be able to get to venues such as restaurants, and that's to show the proof of vaccination. Traditionally, this is not permitted to non-EU nationals, but for France, they have created a process where persons, as in passengers, looking to get this green pass can submit information to a specific email address, things like proof of vaccination, your airline information, and filling out an online form. Authorities will review it, and if approved, then they will send you an email with the QR code. Now, this QR code is only good for France. And then last for Europe is Greenland. Vaccinated people looking to travel there need to also now show a PCR test 48 hours prior to arrival. For this country, non-vaccinated persons are barred entry from the country.
Got it. Okay. Well, any news from the Middle East this time around?
One country to note here is Saudi Arabia. As of August 1st, they did announce that they are permitting vaccinated persons to come in for tourism. So for those persons looking to come in, they need to, of course, get the appropriate tourist visas. They'll need to fill out a disclaimer form for entry, provide proof of vaccination, obtain a PCR test 72 hours prior to arrival, and register online via 2 online application forms. So when they do enter, of course, they do not need to go through quarantine.
Got it. Okay, and let's finish off your worldwide review with Asia Pacific.
So the only country for APAC is going to be Hong Kong. On August 8th, they did change their categorization to a simplified version, which is a low, mid, and high risk. Originally, the US was on the mid risk, but they just got added to the high risk. With that, the entry requirements still remain the same as far as COVID testing and other documentation for proof. But the one item that's changed here is that it used to be 14-day quarantine for the mid, but now on high, it's 21 days.
Got it. Okay, so following up on something, you already covered that vaccine access requirements are emerging in France in particular. What other trends related to that are of note?
So there are 2 trends I did want to mention. The first thing is that a lot of countries, I mean, the whole Caribbean is almost covering this, and we're seeing other countries kind of get on that bandwagon, is the proof of vaccination for entry in addition to a PCR test. So it's important to make sure that domestically at your home base, you have that resource available to you. And also traveling internationally, going from one country to another, this may also likely be required. So you want to make sure that you secure those sources when you're traveling internationally. Now for passengers or for clients that do use Universal for other services, we do have a great mobile PCR solution for them. So if that's something that they're interested in, they can definitely reach out to us for that. And the second item is that a lot of countries, in addition to everything else, are also wanting that travel health insurance. So if you haven't secured a source to be able to get that, especially on demand when it's required for that last minute trip, I would recommend that you do so immediately.
Okay. As always, good advice from Christine. And let's not forget, I'm not going to even let her say it. I'm just going to say it for her. Plan ahead. Plan ahead. Thank you, Christine. All right, so I'm going to go now to Adam so he can fill in on the North America side of the house. Let me bring you in. Adam, welcome.
How you doing, Annabelle?
All right. Good to see you. And Adam, I understand you're joining us today live from the virtual presentation floor of the Essentials in Scheduling and Dispatch class for Business Aviation that's taking place right now. It started yesterday, right? So it's yesterday and today.
Yep, we're on day 2 of our 2-day course. So it's been really exciting, and our group is joining us in the webinar. So hey,
yes,
everybody.
Exactly. So I want to say welcome to all of the students in the class. Good to have all of you with us. And of course, our training guru, Gary Wiley, I'm sure is online with us as well. So thanks for joining today's Ops Update. All right, so Adam, let's get started with Canada.
Canada. So after many, many months of discussion and talk, there has actually been movement in Canada. And as of August 9th, so this is already currently in place, but we haven't talked about it since we met last, fully vaccinated U.S. citizens and permanent residents of the U.S. are permitted to enter Canada for non-essential travel. That vaccination status, this is really important, like Christine was just saying, though, that vaccination status does not remove the requirement to have a negative COVID test in addition. So those two things are kind of going in tandem, right? The negative COVID test helps you get the access. This vaccinated status, they're feeling more comfortable with you being able to move around the country. So that's very exciting. It is not yet applicable to crew, because your active crew and deadheading crew remain essential workers. So this vaccine status does not affect them. This is only, again, for U.S. travelers and U.S. permanent residents. So other travelers to Canada that are not fully vaccinated are still prohibited, although they are looking at September the 7th. So again, a proposed planned date. This is not, for sure yet, but they are planning to expand this on September the 7th. The other expansion that they've had is that they've expanded out to the 9 ports that you can arrive into: Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary, Halifax, Quebec City, Ottawa, Winnipeg, and Edmonton, instead of just the 4 that we were previously restricted to.
Got it. So definitely some good news and movement in Canada. So how about the US? What's the latest there?
Not so much movement, right? So we've seen some partners like the UK and Canada make some adjustments that allow for more movement from the US. Jason's certainly going to talk about the UK with us, but we have not seen the US reciprocate that as of yet. So the essential worker border ban is still up through August 21st. It has not been extended again yet, but we'll keep a close eye on that. There's a lot of discussion about things that may change in presidential proclamations, but the presidential proclamation issued in June is still the standard, and nothing on that document is invalid as of today. The NIEs, just a reminder, have been extended to now for national interest exemptions for those who are foreign nationals who are suspended and wanting to come to the United States. They've been expanded to now be valid for up to 1 year. But we've seen that there's a high level of volume for those requests, and requests that were taking 5, 7, 10 business days. Now they're calling for 20 business days or more. We've also seen the reasons that those NIEs are approved starting to shrink, especially around the business purpose, looking for specific types of business and specific types of transactions that are gaining approvals. As well as medical and humanitarian, of course, but things are a little tighter. 2 notes of things that have continually come up: 14-day travel history. Remember, your travel history for people coming back to the United States, if they're suspended, day 1 is a day that you have spent completely outside of suspended regions. So that is day 1. So we keep having issues with the count of those days. And then for people traveling abroad, great program for U.S. travelers, STEP enrollment. You should look into it for U.S. operators, signatory carrier status, and visa waivers.
Got it. Okay. And so speaking of not being able to count and brain fog, apparently I completely gave Gary a different last name. It's Gary Martin.
the Gary Martin.
The THE capitalized, the Gary Martin.
I forgive you.
Thank you, Gary. That means the world to me. So let's just make sure. I'm sure the class was going, what Gary is she talking about? Anyway, that said, so Hopefully I can keep up with the 14 days as well. So that's it. Well, as well, Adam, now that we've covered Canada and US, that leaves us with Mexico. Anything new there?
There's really no new changes, although reports back as far as people traveling to Mexico, resorts and things like that are still open, but they have their own traffic light system and regions within the country that are very challenging in regards to COVID, as well as other restrictions. But so you should be aware of where you're wanting to travel within Mexico when you get there. But as far as accessing the country, still no change.
Got it. Okay, so Adam, thank you, and again, thanks to our dispatch and scheduling class attendees. I look forward to you giving me lots of good feedback afterwards. So that's coming. I'm going to ask Gary, Martin, and Adam to give us feedback as well. We'd love new topics, so you guys are a great source. All right, so I'm going to move from Adam on to another expert that's joining us, a return frequent visitor, Jason Hayward with Universal Aviation Stansted. So welcome in, Jason. I might just have to start a rewards program for our Universal Aviation team members for how much I draw on their expertise. But I'm sure, Jason, you would really love to get to the point where there was nothing more new of note to share and it was business as usual for the UK. I know we're all looking forward to getting to that. So, but we do have some excellent news. As of the beginning of August, the UK is finally open. Can you briefly restate the changes and the restrictions?
Yes, thanks, Annabelle, and we'll look forward to that day as well. But for now, there have been some big changes, which were earlier than expected. That change is that US nationals, and this is for passengers and crew who are fully vaccinated with an FDA-approved vaccine, can travel from an amber list country following the green list rules. The same applies for EU nationals who have had an EU accredited vaccine and UK nationals who are fully vaccinated with the NHS vaccine. All can travel from amber list countries following green list rules. And they are, you need to test prior to arrival, and that can be a lateral flow or PCR, complete your passenger locator form, and then have a pre-booked day 2 test, which has to be PCR. If you complete all of those, there is no need to quarantine.
All right, that sounds like very good news indeed. So right now, on your side of the house, as you look at the incoming new traffic, what are the hiccups and potential problems occurring?
Actually, very few, but there is very little ambiguity in the changes. So US nationals, for instance, who may have been vaccinated in Canada cannot fulfill these, cannot complete these changes as hit. So it's very, 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 very clear.
So very, very specific. Okay.
Yes.
So back to, I know we harp on it a lot, but the specificity of all of the elements for each particular country of entry, in this case, the UK, is essential when you're examining the trip. Okay.
Correct.
So speaking of demand in general, so as we know, London is a very in-demand location in regular times, and clearly people I know were waiting for this opening to come. And with summer winding down for Europe and some of the leisure traffic, business traffic is likely to start resurging. I know we covered it before, but it's a good time to review what's new and perhaps not so new for regular and recurring business aviation traffic, and how's that situation shaping up?
Yes, we've seen a very large increase in US traffic in the first 2 weeks of August. In fact, I think that's up around 105% based on July's figures. That's been led by the charter market, but corporate traffic is starting to book in now in some numbers for the latter part of August, moving through into September.
All right. On that note, London airports, this is a good time to remind that there are options. Could you go over those?
Yeah, well, London is a very big city, and there are lots of different areas to the city that people come here for. So I think first and foremost is proper planning. Make sure you know where your passengers are going. Pick the airport around the London region that best suits your needs. Currently, there's only one airport which is able to offer 24/7 access, which is Stansted. Luton has a GA ban, which runs through until the end of September. And consider costs as well. There's a big disparity in lots of the airports on things like parking charges and fuel charges as well. So plan ahead, plan properly. There's a wide choice in the London market.
Got it. All right, and events are back on the agenda in London. Happy to see a few of those coming up on the schedule, but it does mean opportunities for more congestion and competition for slots. Any advice for high traffic events such as Fashion Week?
Yes, so Fashion Week is coming up, so all the guys in the office are practicing their Zoolander blue steel look with varying degrees of absurdity. Northolt is a very good choice for that due to its proximity to the city. But events for Fashion Week are happening right across London. So again, check where your passengers are going to and book as appropriate.
Got it. Okay, so this is actually my favorite part of every webinar when I have Jason on as a guest. Jason's sage advice for business aviation operators.
Well, this week, Annabelle, we'd like to take you to a scary place, which is known as Brexit Corner. As you can see, the special effects budget has taken a big hit this last year. But UK TCO applications will be sent out in the not too distant future. The UK CAA has been working to get the UK TCOs with national carriers booked so far. They have said they will be reaching out to everybody that has an EASA TCO very shortly. They will be working at pace to make sure that everybody has their UK TCO if they need that, which is for Part 135 operators. Don't forget UK air passenger duties when you're back flying again. And if you enjoyed EU ETS, there is a sequel now, a little bit like Return of the Empire, which is UK ETS. Now, luckily, Adam and his team of regulatory Ewoks will be able to cut through all of that and make sure that you stay on the right side of the empire.
Wow, I'm just picturing all of regulatory services in little Ewok outfits, singing, dancing at the end of the movie. Okay, I'm back. Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate it. And we'll be sure to make room for your next set of sage advice.
Thank you.
Especially the props. Definitely a fave. Thank you, Jason. Okay, so from that, I mean, Kara, you're going to have a tough act to follow, I'm afraid. So let's go to our special guest from Marriott International. Welcome to Kara. All right, welcome, Kara. So it's very good to have you. And I do need to thank the leader of our in-house hotel team here at Universal, Craig Nussman. I think hopefully him and some of his team are able to join today. I really want to thank them for connecting me with Kara. Craig and our team in-house from hotels, they're experts and they're booking as an integrated part of our managed trip service every day. And I know that they've seen their volume increase exponentially these last few months. Hotels are definitely a key part of trip logistics, both for crew and for passengers, and obviously for everyone. The pandemic put a wrench in a lot of those typical plans and what our expectations are and how hotel chains are managing them. So, Kara, we really appreciate the opportunity to get the Marriott perspective on some of the questions that we repeatedly get from our operators, and I know that our hotel team deals with as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So COVID testing, as we just talked about, it's with us to stay, and we're actually going to dig more into this a little bit with a COVID testing expert from the laboratory side. But it's going to be with us a while longer, clearly, and one of the recurring questions we get is, how is Marriott as a worldwide entity, are you putting in place to help facilitate meeting the demand for COVID testing at locations worldwide?
Absolutely. Great question. The COVID testing really is something that is still being handled on a hotel level. As Christine kind of alluded to, definitely plan ahead. We're really following current policies, recommendations, CDC, everything that comes out. I did talk to a couple of our hotels in Mediterranean, which I know is a huge market right now. And actually a couple of our hotels had great information. The La Meridian in Nice has a pharmacy next door and also a testing site across the street. The Sheraton Milan actually has an independent society with a desk at the entrance of the hotel. So a lot of them are doing things or in their local market to have them close by so they can meet the needs of anybody that needs either something quick or as those 72 72-hour or 48-hour requirements are there nearby and you need to go to a different country, they've got some great options, but definitely the local hotels are handling that and getting that set up and have great recommendations if you need something in a hurry.
Okay, so it sounds like definitely be checking in the market directly
Absolutely.
with the property that you are booking with or plan to be staying with or have passengers at, so that you can make arrangements. All right, so on that same note, good news. There has been a definitive increase in travel May through August, especially. So what are some of the trends you're seeing in bookings, especially for places like the Mediterranean?
Everything, yes, is definitely coming back. Each market is rebounding differently based on local restrictions, access to vaccinations, as we've seen, as restrictions are lifted. We are actually hopefully seeing a turning point and turning that corner. We've been seeing future booking pace increase over the next few months, the last couple months. They've been increasing 20% plus over the year or month over month for future bookings and things coming in. Definitely seeing more of a surge still on the leisure or pleasure travel, but some of the corporate ones that are coming back are longer now. Instead of 2 or 3 day corporate trip, it might be 4, 5, 6 days as they're bringing families to make that a part of a leisure trip as well. Everybody just kind of wants to get out there and kind of get back to travel. So we definitely we're anticipating more of that corporate travel, of course, to continue towards the end of the year, increase as additional offices are open for our clients, additional travel is restricted. Those restrictions are lifted. But we are seeing, especially in like the Mediterranean, we just had an article that came out. We're still building hotels, we're still opening things. And we actually have 10 new hotels that are slated to be open by the end of 22, specifically in Turkey alone. So that in international markets are still building and they're still increasing everything. So we're hoping to get back sooner rather than later.
Great, well, that is good news, the continued development. All right, so another really hot topic around hotels and bookings, cancellation policies, especially for business travelers with changing itineraries, and that certainly fits the bill for our operators. Flexibility had been extended quite a bit as far as cancellation policies over the last 18 months, and that is coming to an end or phasing out for many chains, and I know Marriott has some changes as well. So for private aviation operators, and I know it's a very familiar topic for our audience, but just to scene set for a second, back to those parking issues that a lot of people experienced at the Mediterranean, that in particular caused a challenge when it came to lodging for crew, because they weren't getting confirmations on where they were going to park that aircraft till very close to the trip, and then being able to either change or book at the last minute, and then clearly at cancellations if changes and or delays occurred in their repositioning. So that really what brings us to talking about cancellations right now. So what is Marriott doing currently in terms of the cancellation process, and how can rewards members expect some additional benefits?
Yeah, so historically, Marriott had moved to a 48-hour cancellation policy for most hotels and general travel. Our partnership with TE has always been to better that and to get as favorable as possible. We do have a 24-hour request for cancellation for all hotels within the Global Hotel Program. Craig and I actually work very closely to handle any cancellation issues that might come up as needed as well. But we are seeing, and I kind of want to reiterate that 24-hour cancellation policy for our hotels means before midnight, the night before your trip, local time. So we're hopefully a lot more flexible for those last minute changes for flights and that need to go to a different airport or a different area, cancel hotels for the crew. And the Bonvoy is definitely the Marriott Rewards program. They're going to be very flexible with all those members as well. So it is something that we just work hand in hand with. If things come up, we understand that. And that's something that we can definitely work through if there's really special issues. But we are still trying to stick with that corporate relationship, having at least that 24-hour cancellation policy or that night before at the most.
All right, and that is a good reminder that that's something, for example, exactly your role is working with, Craig on specifically a policy that And his whole team. I got it. Okay, that makes sense. A good reminder. So let's talk a little bit more about the rewards program and Bonvoy. So I'm sure you are quite aware that within the aviation community, you have some very, very loyal and top tier status members in the business aviation community in particular. So what's the latest on how Marriott is helping rewards members since we've had this great change in travel pattern over the last 18 months, and how is status being protected?
Absolutely. That is something obviously we're very concerned about as well. We want everybody to be out there traveling and staying with us, and that we know that status is very important. All status levels, just to kind of reiterate, so all status levels that were obtained in 2019 for 2020 have been extended through February 1st of 22. So if you whatever status you made that you would have had for 20 and then into 21, again, will be rolled into 22 or beginning of 22. Beginning of this year in February, Marriott did offer a bonus of 50% of the qualifying nights requirement was deposited into your account. And you should have seen that. It was based on the level that you had qualified for the year before. So if you needed 10 nights to get to the next level, 5 nights were automatically put into your account in February. That just helps kind of give that bonus for getting back on the road and meeting those qualifications. And any type of travel will qualify for those elite night credits. So corporate, leisure, anything, it will help boost that and hopefully help meet that. So you will need to requalify this year, but half of that has already been done for you. So hopefully we can get back out even with a leisure weekend or those few nights here and there, and kind of top off that account to requalify for next year.
Got it. Okay, good advice and reminders. So as far as staffing and health and safety issues, all these things seem to be going together because of some of the challenges that Marriott and frankly many other lodging providers are facing. Really service providers in general. So both things, how is Marriott addressing your from a health protocol standpoint, you have reduced staffing levels, so how are you still meeting those requirements? And then just staffing challenges overall.
It's a challenge. It's a challenge across the industry for sure. Not even just Marriott, hospitality, travel, anything like that is definitely, we are facing staffing challenges. It is kind of market by market. Still, some areas are better than others. With everybody being, a lot of businesses and hotels being closed due to COVID, we found a lot of associates either had to find other employment or they weren't comfortable. They're still wanting to stay home or however, whatever's happening in the market and personal preference, staffing levels are very difficult to bring back to pre-pandemic on all levels. We have done some things internally with our hotels, not necessarily across the board, but a lot of hotels are finding we've moved to a limited housekeeping for a lot of properties. If that's usually about a 3-day kind of process. So if you're there at a hotel for 2 or 3 nights, you won't see housekeeping unless you specifically request it. If you are there for a longer term stay, usually every 3 or 4 days, they'll come in and kind of touch up as needed when you're out and things like that. So really the main thing I can reiterate, as we talked about, is kind of be patient and as understanding as possible. We know it's longer lines to check in some cases. We know, getting that something up to the hotel, up to your room as requested might take a little bit longer. A lot of our staff are doing multiple jobs now just because we don't have a full and complete staff at a lot of properties. So just be patient and help us where we want you back as much as possible, and we want to be there. So we're trying to staff as much as we can as quickly as possible, just running into some challenges based on the markets.
Right, and that was, as Kara was helping prepare for this with me, it was really all of us experience it even at the individual level and for leisure travel personally, but it is a good reminder that some of those people are pulling double, triple duty across, and they're not often trained until very recently on some of those other duties. So it is taking longer, and that was I guess it perhaps should have been obvious, but it's a good reminder that just like in our own organizations, we've all been covering multiple and spanning across a couple of areas with increased scope. They're doing the same. Okay, well, thank you for that. And on that note, one recurring message we got was, hey, what about dining because
Absolutely.
for crew in particular, this is incredibly important because they have limited hours for rest. They are often relying on their lodging or their place of lodging to provide them with or have easy access to food and beverage while they're in the rest period or getting back to the aircraft quickly. This is also suffering from staffing shortages and other concerns. What do you have to share related to the dining perspective?
Absolutely. And it has changed and things are or should be getting better in a lot of properties. We did have a lot of hotels that had to close their restaurants. They couldn't serve the buffet breakfast or continental breakfast like they normally would. A lot of that is opening back up. And as soon as a local restriction has opened, which most of them have, those were back open. I have stayed personally at a few of our hotels and the breakfasts are back, so we're good there. A lot of hotels do have the grab and go options and have moved to a lot of that and have expanded that. I've talked to a few different properties that have expanded their grab and goes. The grab and goes were made fresh by their chef every day, so it's something that could be warmed up quickly based if it was off hours or something really fast. I would really just recommend if that you know that you have a quick trip, a really quick trip, or you're coming in after hours where most things are normally closed, touch base with the hotel and let them know. And hey, I'm going to be in kind of during this time and this time. Can we, what options would you have? Could we have something ready? Just kind of work with them on that aspect. And most will be more than happy to accommodate, especially if they have some warning. So they can pre-plan for that as well, again, with the staffing and make sure that they have that prepared. We want to be there to help and have that hospitality as quickly as we can and to the best of our ability. So just give us a heads up and we'll hopefully be there to make everything great for your stay.
Got it. And Kara, that actually is a common refrain. We always talk about pre-planning, and I know it's adding burden to trip planning, but back to communicating actively with the property as well. Engage them in your dining needs if necessary. I know we don't want to hear that, but for the time being, that may be a way to help head off a problem once on site. Okay. Got it. Well, thank you so much, Kara, for those insights. And she is going to stay with us for Q&A. So I know she's going to have a couple of questions. I think we've got some coming in via the chat. So we'll get back with you in a few minutes. So next, I want to bring on our guest, Ziad with Cedars Health. Welcome,
Hello.
Ziad. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So this is where we're going to wrap up our planned content. Then we're going to go into our questions. So if you haven't gotten questions in, please go ahead and get those in so Lewis can start vetting them and putting them in order. So I did want to, so back to Ziad and what he's here to talk about, which is really around COVID testing and the operational impact. As mentioned in my intro, Cedars manages a certified lab headquartered in the US and with significant experience in mobile field laboratory operations. Ziad and his team have actually helped create a custom solution now for mobile PCR testing for business aviation. And we're actually, as Universal, partnering with them to put this tool in the hands of flight departments with an eye to maximizing their flexibility in the current environment. Especially now with the uptick in Delta, we see PCR testing as continuing to be that gold standard and back to giving you every opportunity to make your trips happen. Even more in demand. And so that's what we're going to look at as some of the things to keep in mind when choosing testing providers and what pitfalls to avoid. So Ziad, welcome and very happy to have you with us.
Thank you.
So I wanted to touch base with you on the overall trend in continued growth for demand for COVID testing, as we just talked about. What are some of the challenges you're seeing business aviation operators run into when planning for COVID testing on a trip?
I'm seeing, a variety of paperwork requirements, apps to download, things to upload into the app. Also, something that's surging, additional testing locally upon arrival or a few days after arrival. The methodology of the testing and the methodology of the sample collection also varies from country to country. Every country is different and restrictions are changing fluidly. Depending on what's happening in the COVID environment, we're seeing that this is going to be a wave by wave situation. So as the waves come in, restrictions will change. Accessibility and transport to testing providers wherever you are on a short-term basis can be challenging. There's also the privacy concern. Foreign countries don't necessarily handle your private information the way we do and regulated. There's also the risk of exposure when traveling to and from and in the facilities. That's something to be aware of. Turnaround times for those labs can be long and can be variable and can cause delays for you guys.
Understood. And I'm sorry, I'm getting a word that my share screen isn't working. So I was trying to fix that here in the background while we get Ziad's perspective. But I'm going to work on that here for just a moment. See if I can get us back online. All right, I'll work on that while Ziad continues. So I specifically wanted to dig into, Ziad, what should an operator look for when choosing a COVID testing provider? Back to, as we just heard from Kara with the Marriott, they in their local markets obviously provide their, these lodging resources are trying to find and source other options. We as Universal have sourced other options as well. We've been making that information available to our operators. But I'd like your perspective as a certified lab itself, like what should you be looking for when you choose the provider for your COVID testing?
Yeah, definitely go to trusted resources for referral to testing sites and options. The Marriott is doing a great effort in that field, and I applaud them for that. That will keep us all safe while we're there. Make sure that those labs are licensed labs. Pay attention to what testing methodology is required at your next destination. Are they requiring PCR tests, antigen tests, nucleic acid amplification tests? And those really can vary greatly. Even in the type of PCR tests, there are different types of PCR tests, and some may vary. And they do look at the details of that when they receive the lab report, the official lab report from the testing site that you visited. Make sure what type of sample collection methodology was used and is required at your destination, because that also varies from nasal swabbing to nasopharyngeal swabbing, and that's two different things. If the country you're going to is requiring only nasal swabbing, why should you do a nasopharyngeal, which is much more invasive and painful? Or vice versa, if they do a nasal swab, it's not enough to get into a country that's requiring nasopharyngeal swab. Even if you had the right methodology of the testing, you must look at the methodology of the sample collection as well. And not all labs will, ask you that question, where you're going and look. They rely on you to specify what you need. Next, ensure that the key information is present on the lab report that shows your result, because they will be looking for those key elements, such as, is the license of the lab, the time of the collection time, of the sample, the testing time, the description of the testing methodology, the description of the sample collection methodology. Not one size fit all, and more countries are requiring QR codes on the lab. We've customized our lab report dozens of times to fit it as much as possible so that it's accepted everywhere, and we've had to also add QR coding, which was new to us, but we were able to add that and vet this lab report with 150 countries, and that list is growing as well. I would say, keep your trip support provider and handler at your location informed of your COVID testing itinerary, and in addition to your regular itinerary schedule. And plan for delays, plan ahead, that's for sure. Annabelle is now sharing our customized lab report. This lab report really includes everything that you would need to enter countries. And when you look at it, these are the elements that you should have on any lab report that is presented to you from the testing site that you visited.
Got it. And we'll do as Lewis, if you could do me a favor, we do have a PDF of that lab sample report. Again, it's just good to look at these fields. It's a lot of technical detail, but back to Ziad's point, and actually the point Christine has made multiple times about entry, it is very different for unique countries. So when it's not just, hey, I need a PCR test, it is, I need to have the lab report provide the local authorities with the information specifically that they're looking for entry. I mean, is that a good way to summarize it, Ziad? And so that can vary significantly by country. And this is a sample of a pretty well vetted one that I know we've gone to over 150 countries with to get their verification and their thumbs up saying, yes, we'll accept this for entry, but as a tool for you. So Lewis, if you could drop that link into the chat. And then Ziad, I know we also, because you've been shepherding some of our clients through with your mobile testing option, you have seen some interesting case studies and scenarios. Do you have anything you can share?
Yeah, we had a recent client who did their due diligence before departure, the week before departure to be specific. And as I said, restrictions are very fluid in this COVID environment because COVID is inherently unpredictable. And so they did their due diligence. They thought that they did not require a test to entry into Panama. They flew there. Upon arrival, they were informed that restrictions had recently changed, and that they are now required to present a negative PCR report. The authorities said we'll send our testing team to your plane. They'll be there in about an hour and a half. The crew on board asked the authorities and told them, we have a US certified lab. It's CLIA licensed. And we have trained testing personnel on board that can test the passengers. The Panamanian authorities said, okay, but just in case we don't approve your lab report, we're going to send our team anyways. By the time their team arrived to the plane, they had already done their testing. We had already issued the lab reports. The Panamanian physician reviewed the lab report, and luckily they were able to enter without having any further delays. And if you look at that in retrospect, 1 hour and a half to get there, probably 30 minutes to collect, an hour and a half to go back to the lab, maybe an hour, 2 hours to run the sample, validate the report, issue the lab report. They could have been there for 4 to 6 hours. Just sitting there for a result, and they were able to immediately act and use this solution that we have, a portable PCR solution, with our staff here in the US, helping them review the report and issue the report within minutes. And luckily they had that and they were able to use it, and that's a great example of how useful this tool can be.
And back to from an operational angle, what is the number one message I think Ziad's conveying is have options, options and plan ahead. It becomes be prepared,
be flexible, understand the testing requirements for every country. Make sure you know what you need when you're on site over there for retesting. And double check. Really, what's important is don't think because you checked the week before that you're okay. Double check, much sooner, much tighter to your flight plans.
when it comes to testing. That's what we're
Yeah.
finding specifically. I know Christine will definitely agree on that. And as we wrap up with Ziad, we're going to jump into our questions. We have some that were submitted. I'm going to go into those really quickly. But if you've got questions directly for Ziad about the product from Cedars, just email us at Operational Insight, and or talk to your account manager so you can find out more. But the number one takeaway is, once again, plan ahead. All right, thank you, Ziad. And you'll stick around with us, I know, for some questions should we have some for your area. Okay, we are getting close to that, about a little less than 10 minutes left in our time. I know I've gone over, so I'm going to rush through these questions, but Lewis, if you've got a few of the live questions ready to go, I'm going to go into our pre-submitted questions. We're going to start with Adam. And Adam, I understand that U.S. citizens must have a PCR test within 72 hours of arrival into the U.S. and complete an attestation form, but are Canadian citizens allowed in? And if so, are the requirements the same? We're going to pick on Canadians apparently right now.
Yeah, exact same requirements. There have not been any changes or exemptions made for Canadian citizens.
Got it. All right, Adam, and we're going to now switch to Kara. Another question for you. Is it possible to have an ambassador type person assigned to a flight department? I guess it's looking for probably a bigger operation that has managing a lot of lodging through the brand. Is there a one-to-one that they could set up?
Unfortunately, the short answer is no. A little bit longer answer is really all of the aspects of our Bonvoy program, which has that ambassador assigned to certain individual levels, is really all individual based. So it's not anything with the Bonvoy program is not on a company or department level. It really is all individual based on those levels and what you obtain on the elite status and those type of things.
Got it. And this is probably a good time to note, because I know some people were asking for Kara's contact info. While Kara has been incredibly helpful in getting, being online with us today, she's not really direct client facing. She works directly with her business partners like Universal. So if you've got questions about how, Marriott works with a partner like us, or how they can work better for you, if you'll contact our hotel team, and Lewis, if you can put the email address in for our hotel operations team, I think that would be the best connection. Anything that's really lodging specific, they are the absolute experts. So if that makes sense. So thank you, Kara. Adam, I have another question for you. There seems to be some question about whether crew on private flights need to be tested prior to U.S.-Canada border crossing, both coming and going. Apparently this is coming from, again, interactions with CBP or CBSA.
Yeah, so I saw that question. It sounds like on a ferry flight, or when it's crew only, they weren't asked for it, or on their arrival, the crew were not addressed when it came to vaccination or testing or anything like that. And it's because they're exempt. So I can see, one, CBP on the U.S. side plays no role. So CBP should not be asking you about testing, period, ever, crew or passengers. But on the CanPass side, if you were an active crew member, it probably didn't come up because you were exempt.
Got it. All right. And then I have another one for you. So any issues or delays you're seeing for U.S. citizens returning from Canada now that it allows travel? So apparently getting back into the U.S.?
It's all about the 14-day travel history. So, I mean, well, for American citizens, you're exempt coming in anyway. So no, there would not be any delays. The only issue that would be there is the border crossing, but coming back from Canada, they've opened up the border. So no, I would say no delays for American citizens coming out of Canada.
Got it. Okay, so thank you, Adam. All right, Lewis, I know it's been active on the chat. So what do we have to share from the live questions? And we'll stay online. I know we're close to that 1 hour. It's kind of my rule right now to not go over that, but I will break it for a few minutes here so that we can get some of these questions answered. And like I said, it's a good time as Lewis gathers his thoughts. Session is recorded, so that'll be in tomorrow's ops email. If you need to drop off, we know your time is valuable, so thanks for joining in when you could. And as well, don't forget that the chat is savable. So go to those ellipses at the bottom, those 3 dots, and you can save a version of that. We will include that in the blog page as well, where we show you the video. In addition, Any questions that we don't get to, if we have to cut off for time, we'll try our best to get back to you one-on-one and make sure you get an answer to the best of our ability through your account manager or another member of the team. Okay, so Lewis, what do we have to share with everyone?
Yeah, thanks, Annabelle. Kara, domestically, with the staffing shortage you talked about in the hospitality industry overall, is the Marriott limiting occupancy in any major U.S. locations at this time?
Not really. We do have some hotels that were still closed, but that's very, very few. Some hotels, just due to staffing, might have a floor or two closed, but it's really hit and miss. So as things come on, it's a very, very fluid thing. So it's hard to quantify what that might look like, but it is really just kind of changing day to day as things open and staffing comes back and travel comes back. So as more people are coming in, we might have a little bit of a hiccup here and there as it, kind of the growing pains, but as soon as we can get people back in, we're going to get staff 100%. So it's just kind of grow with us.
Thanks, Karen. Question for Ziad. Ziad, what are your thoughts on the CDC statement from July 21st regarding the PCR test that cannot differentiate between COVID and influenza? How can we be sure that tests used abroad do not have the same issue and therefore result in false positives?
Yeah, we have actually heard physicians bring this issue up even before the CDC had issued this statement. And what I would say is, this depends a lot on the type of test that's being used and the methodology of it. And it is a known issue. This COVID thing has come and hit us from left field, and what I'm trying to say is it's better to have a test than not, and look at the specificity and the sensitivity of the tests you're going to use. Make sure those numbers are high. Definitely on a sensitivity level, you want it to be above 97%. Like, for example, the Acula PCR we use is at 98% sensitivity, which means it agrees with the very complex lab machines at 98% of the time on positives. And if you're having a false positive, honestly, it's better to have a false positive than a false negative, because a false negative means that you're carrying around the virus without knowing it and potentially infecting the people around you. A false positive would, force you to take more precautions and isolate yourself. And now, for example, the device that we use also, it could test for both, specifically for SARS-CoV-2 or for the flu virus. You just have to carry the necessary kits with you.
Thank you, Ziad.
Sure.
Christine, can flight crews get the French Green Pass QR code since they don't have an airline ticket?
Yes, they can. I saw one of our readers was able to get it through the concierge at the hotel, and I know that you can also submit that process via the email with submitting all the appropriate information.
Great, thanks. Back to you, Kara. Will Marriott ambassador level guests be getting a dedicated ambassador again? The team approach is nowhere near the same level of service.
I will follow up on that. I know some things I think on the levels have changed a bit, but I will definitely follow up and I can let Annabelle know if we've got some changes or if there's any timelines for program updates that way, and follow back up.
Thanks. Annabelle, that's all the questions that I have. I don't think I missed any, unless anybody's got a final one.
Yeah, we'll be on for another couple of seconds here in case anyone has anything else. But I really want to take a second now to thank Kara and Ziad for joining us. They joined us rather last minute a couple of days ago, so they were great in preparing content based on kind of the what we're hearing from our team members and from our account managers, as well as some of you as to what you wanted to see. So we were very, very pleased to be able to bring on some different experts to give you some different perspectives. While that said, we do plan to hopefully join you in September. We'll probably have a short session. We're going to do something a little bit more brief since we're going to be getting ready for NBAA base in 2021 in October, but we will look to have a session in the mid part of September, late September. So I hope you can join us for that. Again, recording will be out tomorrow. And if you have any suggestions for topics, like this is where a lot of these topics have come from that we covered today, please email me at operationalinsight@univway.com. And I believe Lewis put up our hotel's email. It's hotels@univway.com. Is that correct, Lewis? Did I get that right? hotels@univway.com. Okay, so again, that's Craig Nussman and his very, very capable team. So the kind of questions that you've had for Kara today, if you want to direct them to Craig and his team, they can obviously get any answers from Marriott specifically, as well as you can talk to your account manager and they can coordinate with the hotel team. All right, so I definitely appreciate everyone's time. I know we went over, but hopefully it was valuable. Look forward to your feedback, especially members of our Essentials and Business Aviation, Essentials and Scheduling and Dispatch team. Let me know what you think and what we could add next time to make it even better. Until September, I look forward to hearing from you online, and then we'll see each other soon. Thanks again.